The first major wizarding war in the Harry Potter universe was a catastrophic period in wizarding history that lasted a whopping 11 years. The war started when Voldemort, obsessed with pure-blood supremacy, sought to overthrow the existing magical order and establish himself as the ruler of both the wizarding and non-magical worlds. The war officially ended on October 31st, 1981, when Voldemort's curse to kill the infant Harry Potter rebounded upon him, destroying his physical form and rendering him powerless. And the aftermath of this decade-long conflict left deep scars on the wizarding world. Families were torn apart, and many prominent witches and wizards lost their lives. The wizarding world was in shambles. But as far as the 7 books are concerned, the primary focus is on the Second Wizarding War, a conflict that only lasted 3 years. And to put it quite bluntly, the Second Wizarding War paled in comparison to the First War, which claimed many more lives and lasted much longer. It also has a much more complex history. The uncertainty of the war can best be summarized from the following quote. Imagine that Voldemort's powerful now. You don't know who his supporters are. You don't know who's working for him and who isn't. You know he can control people so that they do terrible things without being able to stop themselves. You're scared for yourself and your family and your friends. Every week, news comes of more deaths, more disappearances, more torturing. The Ministry of Magic's in disarray. They don't know what to do. They're trying to keep everything hidden from the Muggles, but meanwhile, Muggles are dying too. Terror everywhere. Panic, confusion. That's how it used to be. Join me today as we discuss every little detail about the First War, covering what we never got to read about in the books. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we're going to be discussing in depth the First Wizarding War, a conflict that spanned 1970 through 1981. Before we get started, I just want to mention that only 30% of you are subscribed, so if you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. One important thing to note right off the bat is that the First Wizarding War should not be confused with the Global Wizarding War, a conflict spanning 1910 to 1945 that was initiated by Grindelwald. The First Wizarding War only affected Wizarding Britain, and Grindelwald had nothing to do with it. The roots of the First Wizarding War can be traced back to Tom Riddle, also known as Lord Voldemort, who was pivotal in every aspect. After being discovered in Wall's orphanage, Tom Riddle was first introduced to the Wizarding world by Dumbledore. During their encounter, Tom received his official invitation to Hogwarts, and it was at this exact moment that a seed was planted, one that would later blossom into the dark legacy of Lord Voldemort. Upon his arrival at the school in 1938, Tom was unsurprisingly sorted into Slytherin House, and despite his dark nature, he had no issues forming connections. Tom may have lacked certain necessary human emotions, but that didn't mean he couldn't control people. His cunning and manipulative nature eventually meant that, in 1939, he would form a gang of sorts, a group consisting of his fellow Slytherin students. He had convinced these witches and wizards that he was their friend and gained their trust, but in reality, Riddle had no desire for friends and simply wanted to use them for his own selfish endeavors. The gang that Riddle formed was once described by Dumbledore, who worked at Hogwarts during this time, as a mixture of the weak seeking protection, the ambitious seeking glory, and the thuggish seeking a leader who could show them more refined cruelty. The gang's name at the time was the Knights of Walpurgis. The members, all from wealthy pure-blood families, were involved in various unpleasant incidents during their school years. Despite this, Tom was careful never to be directly associated with any wrongdoing and was perceived as an exemplary student. He first became a prefect in 1942 during his 5th year, and then in 1944, during his 7th year, he became head boy. It was around this time that he eventually had to accept that his father was the Muggle and his mother the magical one. From then on, Riddle adopted the alias Lord Voldemort to avoid any reminder of his filthy Muggle father. At this stage, it was evident that Dumbledore was the only person who saw through Tom's manipulative charm. Because of this, Dumbledore closely monitored Tom, and their relationship actually plays a crucial role in the First Wizarding War. During his final year at Hogwarts in 1945, Voldemort witnessed Dumbledore's display of true power when he took action to help halt the Global Wizarding War. Dumbledore dueled and defeated Grindelwald, imprisoning him in his own fortress, which finally brought an end to the Global Wizarding War and ushered in a period of peace for the wizarding world. However, Voldemort was aware that this peace would not last long, given the plans he had in mind. This defeat of Grindelwald by Dumbledore marks the intersection of the Global Wizarding War with the First Wizarding War, which later connects to the Second Wizarding War when Voldemort sought out the Elder Wand and encountered Grindelwald in 1998. During his 6th year at Hogwarts, Tom Riddle discussed the theoretical possibility of creating 6 horcruxes with Professor Slughorn, shocking the professor with his interest in dark magic. This act marked Riddle's continued descent into darkness and pursuit of immortality through dark and forbidden magic. And so, in June of 1942, Voldemort began his journey of Horcrux creation. In the same year, Tom Riddle killed Myrtle Warren in the Hogwarts bathroom, effectively creating his first Horcrux by placing a piece of his soul into his diary. Then, in August of 1943, Tom Riddle travelled to the town of Little Hangleton and killed his father. On this occasion, Tom used a ring previously owned by Marvolo Gaunt, his grandfather, to create his second Horcrux. Then, in 1945, Tom finally graduated from Hogwarts. Having finally completed his education, Riddle graduated and wasted no time in pursuing his next endeavour. Seizing the opportunity that presented itself with the retirement of Galatea Merrythought, Riddle swiftly applied for the vacant position of Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts. Riddle saw this position not only as a chance to impart his knowledge of the dark arts, but also as a means to further establish his dominance within the wizarding community. However, Dumbledore, who had kept a watchful eye over Tom for a number of years, advised against hiring Riddle as a Hogwarts staff member. This resulted in Armando Dippet politely declining Riddle's application for the role, claiming that he was too young, but encouraged him to try again in the future. It was around the same time that Riddle became enthralled with the history of Hogwarts and its founders, particularly their relics. He used his cunning and charms to coerce the ghost of Helena Ravenclaw, the Grey Lady, and daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, to divulge the hiding place of her mother's diadem in a remote Albanian forest. Riddle then obtained the diadem and later killed an Albanian peasant, turning the object into his third Horcrux. When he returned to England, Riddle turned down several positions offered to him at the Ministry of Magic, opting instead to work at Borgin & Burke's in Knockturn Alley. It was here that he formed a one-sided fake friendship with Hepzibah Smith, a wealthy antiques collector, and used the opportunity to get hold of Helga Hufflepuff's cup and Salazar Slytherin's locket. Riddle would later kill Hepzibah using poison and frame her house elf for the crime. He then resigned from his post at Borgin & Burke's and disappeared, using the murders of Hepzibah and a random muggle to create his fourth and fifth Horcruxes. At this point, Voldemort disappeared for nearly a decade, from 1961 to 1971. However, many other things happened during this period of time that would influence the war to come. In 1959, Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew were born, followed by the births of James Potter, Remus Lupin, Lily Evans, and Severus Snape in 1960, individuals that would all later play significant roles in the First Wizarding War. In 1962, Nobby Leach became the Minister for Magic, the first Muggle-born to hold the position, causing controversy among older and pureblood ministry workers. Many resigned in protest, leading to a divided and weakened ministry. Leach's tenure ended in 1968 when he fell ill, with Abraxas Malfoy, Draco Malfoy's grandfather, being suspected of poisoning him due to his Muggle-born status. Leach passed away soon after, further weakening the corrupt ministry. These events created an atmosphere of chaos and division, making it easier for Voldemort to exploit the situation after his return. While seemingly vanished between 1961 and 1971, Voldemort delved deep into the dark arts, studying obscure branches of magic and forging connections with loyal dark wizards. By the time 1970 had rolled around, Voldemort had completely abandoned the name Tom Riddle and had fully embraced the identity of Lord Voldemort. He instilled fear in the entire wizarding world, leading them to refer to him as He Who Must Not Be Named, or You-Know-Who, out of sheer terror. And upon his return, the first thing that Voldemort did was try again to become the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts, hoping to recruit an army of students. Dumbledore, however, denied him the position. During his time away, Voldemort merged his former group, the Knights of Walpurgis, with newfound allies, rebranding them as the Death Eaters. And so, when Voldemort resurfaced in 1971, he had a large following of Death Eaters ready to carry out his plans of spreading terror and wreaking havoc. Voldemort conveyed to his Death Eaters that in order to establish a world of peace and dominance, the existing regime must be eradicated at any expense. Only individuals with pure blood and aligned ideals would be permitted to flourish in this new realm. As far as dark witches and wizards went, the Death Eaters were the worst. Their group was comprised of evil witches and wizards that were all hell-bent on pursuing their dark ambitions. They were the followers of Lord Voldemort, and they obeyed his every bidding in an effort to cleanse the wizarding world, the ultimate goal being to restore pure blood authority. And so, the First Wizarding War officially began around 1971. And in this same year, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, Severus Snape, and Lily Evans all began their first year at Hogwarts. Snape swiftly befriended Slytherin students with an inclination towards dark magic and worshipping the new tyrant, Lord Voldemort. Meanwhile, James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter formed a close friendship, while Snape found himself as their adversary due to incessant bullying by James and Sirius. These interactions would go on to shape their futures and decisions, unknowingly playing a significant role in the impending First Wizarding War. Because he was denied the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, Voldemort realized that he would need to amass an army through different means, and so between 1971 and 1973, he recruited various beings and creatures shunned by the wizarding world, including giants, werewolves, a significant number of dementors, and acromantulas, among others. This coalition of outcast beings, alongside his Death Eaters, wreaked widespread destruction and chaos, marking the early years of the war in the early 1970s. This wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got 'em too. Some were afraid, some just wanted a bit of his power, because he was getting himself power, alright. Dark days, Harry. With his army of dark creatures and wizards under his command, Voldemort initiated an attack on the British Ministry of Magic, aiming to topple it and establish a new world order run by purebloods. And to achieve his goals, the Death Eaters and their allies carried out attacks on Muggles, both for their own entertainment and to create chaos. These incidents consumed progressively more of the Ministry's time and attention as they attempted to heal survivors, search for the culprits, and prevent future attacks. And as things ramped up, Death Eaters began targeting Muggleborns and blood traitors, subjecting them to torture and sometimes death, instilling fear in wizarding society. The casting of the dark mark over the sites of their murders served to create further terror. They were truly dark times. In response to the growing army of Lord Voldemort and his followers, Albus Dumbledore recognized that he would need to create an army of his own, subsequently establishing the Order of the Phoenix in 1971. Despite the Ministry's official perspective of the Order as a rebel group, influential Ministry officials, including Elphias Doge, Daedalus Diggle, and Alistair Moody, swiftly joined. The purpose was to engage in covert and surprise attacks against the Dark Rebellion. Other members of the Order included Aberforth, Albus's younger brother, Mrs. Figg, a squib who cohabited the same street as the Dursleys in the future, Alice and Frank Longbottom, who were both Aurors, Mundungus Fletcher, Hagrid, and Fabian and Gideon Pruitt, Molly Weasley's brothers. Most members of the Order had met Dumbledore before and respected him, which encouraged them to join him in his fight and trust him with their lives. However, despite the Order's efforts, Voldemort's magical power and influence continued to expand, leading to more frequent and brutal attacks conducted by him and his Death Eaters. Hogwarts, however, emerged as a safe haven amidst the chaos, with Dumbledore serving as the only wizard capable of challenging Voldemort. He was the only man that Voldemort feared. At the same time, Death Eaters spread terror by marking murder scenes with the Dark Mark. They also kept their identities concealed to maintain secrecy within their ranks, introducing an element of confusion and paranoia to the wizarding community. As if that wasn't enough, Voldemort's use of the Imperius Curse heightened confusion and suspicion even further, leading friends and family to doubt one another. And all of the chaos happening at the Ministry of Magic certainly didn't help things. Then Minister Eugenia Jenkins had to address squib riots in 1968, exacerbating the divide between pureblood supremacists and those with mixed heritage. And when Voldemort resurfaced in 1971, Jenkins faced chaos both within the wizarding world and the Ministry. Following her ineffective attempts to combat Voldemort over 4 years, she was ousted from office in 1975. Her successor, Minister Harold Mincham, took a strong stance against Voldemort, but faced protests from minority groups demanding equal treatment. This ignited tensions among elite pureblood families, feeling their traditions were in jeopardy, leading some pureblood supremacists to align with Voldemort's cause. It was also around this time that Bartemius Barty Crouch Sr., the Council of Magical Law head judge, rose quickly through the ministry's ranks and became head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Together, Crouch and Mincham were able to make some headway with regards to the Death Eater threat, but they were only able to garner small victories in a much larger battle. In 1978, Severus Snape finally graduated from Hogwarts and subsequently aligned himself with the Death Eaters, joining former classmates like Evan Rosier, Lucius Malfoy, and Bellatrix Lestrange. At Snape's suggestion, Voldemort sought to recruit Lily Evans, a Muggle-born witch of exceptional talent, along with their close friends Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. But despite Voldemort's efforts, they all courageously refused to join his ranks. At least, that's how it looked. Following their defiance, James and Lily married and, alongside their friends, instead became members of the Order of the Phoenix. During the brutal war, the outnumbered Order faced many challenges, with Fabian and Gideon Pruitt being murdered, many Order members vanishing, and families of Order members becoming targets. Despite the losses, however, they continued fighting, and during this period, James and Lily Potter, as well as Alice and Frank Longbottom, defied Voldemort 3 times, a significant event contributing to the prophecy. Voldemort then focused his attention on a select group of his younger followers who possessed great magical abilities and unwavering loyalty. He took Severus Snape and Bellatrix Lestrange under his personal mentorship, imparting to them aspects of his secret knowledge of the dark arts. At this stage, Bellatrix developed a dangerous infatuation with Voldemort, bordering on obsession, something which he did not reciprocate. Voldemort also entrusted his diary Horcrux to Lucius Malfoy, intending to use it to open the Chamber of Secrets without directly targeting Hogwarts while Dumbledore remained headmaster. Severus Snape eventually became Voldemort's most trusted follower, even more so than Bellatrix. Despite this, Voldemort kept Snape unaware of its importance. In 1979, Regulus Black, younger brother of Sirius Black, completed his education at Hogwarts and joined the Death Eaters as well. And while he initially embraced pureblood supremacy, he later became disillusioned with the group's deranged leader and was horrified by the violent actions against Muggles. Around this time, Voldemort sought to test the defenses around his Horcruxes and tasked Regulus's house elf Kreacher with this, callously leaving him to die. When Kreacher survived and returned home, Regulus realized that Voldemort had created a Horcrux and attempted to destroy it. This endeavor led to his violent death at the hands of the Inferi, but he managed to replace the locket with a counterfeit and entrusted the real Horcrux to Kreacher. In 1980, Minister Mincham was also removed from office due to his failure to end the war and was immediately replaced with Millicent Bagnold. And at this point, the war entered its most desperate phase, and Death Eaters began ruthlessly targeting and murdering members of the Order. Marlene McKinnon and her family were killed by Travers, Knott, and Mulciber, while Edgar Burns and his family fell victim to Thorfinn Rowell and Fenrir Greyback. Gideon and Fabian Pruitt were slain by Antonin Dolohov, and Dorcas Meadows, Caradoc Dearborn, and Benji Fenwick also met tragic fates at the hands of Voldemort and his followers. These losses marked a grim escalation in the conflict. In response to this, Barty Crouch Sr. finally authorized Ministry auras to use lethal force and unforgivable curses. Alistair Moody, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Frank and Alice Longbottom spearheaded a successful Ministry campaign against the Death Eaters, focusing on battling giants and apprehending supporters of Voldemort. Alistair Moody's capture of Igor Karkaroff and other Dark Lord sympathizers, along with the imprisonment of Antonin Dolohov and Corbin Yaxley, marked significant victories. Despite these successes, Voldemort remained beyond reach due to his elusiveness and unmatched power, with Dumbledore being the only one capable of confronting him. Despite the ongoing war, life continued for those who had not yet been directly impacted by it. Led by Dumbledore, Hogwarts remained a stronghold of top-tier magical education and remained untouched by the Death Eaters. It was speculated that marriages and births increased significantly during this time of uncertainty, the result of couples marrying early due to the war's unpredictability. In late July of 1980, James and Lily Potter had a son, Harry Potter, while Frank and Alice Longbottom welcomed their son, Neville Longbottom. Cue the prophecy. The prophecy, of course, refers to the prediction foretold by Sybil Trelawney in the year 1980. In this same year, Trelawney found herself in the Hogsmeade pub with Dumbledore, interviewing for her post as professor. During her interview, a disappointed and unimpressed Dumbledore began to lose interest, when suddenly Sybil entered into a trance. In her trance-like state, Sybil spoke of the famous prophecy that we all know, explaining that Voldemort would be defeated. It spoke of a boy that would be born at the end of July, that possessed the power to defeat the Dark Lord himself. What Dumbledore and Sybil did not know, however, was that Snape, who was then a Death Eater, was eavesdropping at the door. This simple fact immediately placed Sybil in great danger from Voldemort, and, in an effort to protect her, Dumbledore hired her for the position at Hogwarts. The prophecy is as follows. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th month dies. What's interesting about Snape eavesdropping is that he did not hear the prophecy in its entirety, and only told Voldemort what he remembered. Because of this, he missed out very important details, like the fact that Harry would be marked as his equal, and that he would possess unknown power. Snape also almost immediately regretted his decision to tell Voldemort, as he quickly realized that it would place the life of Lily Evans, the only girl he ever loved, in jeopardy. With the information that had been provided to him by Snape, Voldemort came to the conclusion that Harry Potter was the boy that the prophecy was talking about. Lily and James Potter were some of Dumbledore's most powerful supporters and integral members of the Order of the Phoenix, which meant that Voldemort already had them on his radar. The only other option for a child that posed this threat to him was Neville Longbottom, who was born on the 30th of July, but Voldemort firmly believed that it was Harry. However, Snape, upon realizing that Voldemort was going to be targeting Lily and her family, sought Dumbledore's help to protect them. Despite some initial reluctance to help Snape, a current Death Eater, Dumbledore eventually agreed to help hide them. And so the Potter family went into hiding, utilizing the Fidelius charm and a designated secret keeper to keep their location hidden. Initially, Dumbledore offered to be their secret keeper, ensuring only himself and a select few could locate the Potters. However, James and Lily chose Sirius as their secret keeper, eventually switching to Peter Pettigrew in secret due to suspicions within their group. Tragically, Pettigrew betrayed them to Voldemort, leading to the devastating events that followed. This brings us to Voldemort's next move. Partially driven by ignorance and partially by foolishness, Voldemort believed that he would be able to circumvent the prophecy by murdering Harry. And so on Wednesday, October 31st, Voldemort travelled to the town of Godric's Hollow where the Potter family lived. It was here that Voldemort, in an attempt to murder Harry, ended up murdering James and Lily. After entering their home, Voldemort first killed James Potter before turning his attention to Lily and baby Harry. As he approached Lily, he requested her to step aside and let him have Harry, partly in consideration of Snape's wishes. Voldemort promised to spare Lily's life if she complied, but her unwavering priority was to protect Harry. Because she would not get out of the way, she was murdered by Voldemort's killing curse. Next, Voldemort turned his wand on Harry. He knew that he was moments away from killing the only boy or wizard that was a threat to him and his regime. However, what would happen next is something that he never could have predicted, as after firing a killing curse at Harry, his curse rebounded back at him, the result of a loving sacrifice that Lily had made. When the curse came back at him, it destroyed him, and it marked the end of Voldemort, at least for a little while. Despite the destruction of Voldemort's body and magic, he did not perish due to his horcruxes, which allowed him to survive in a weakened, bodiless form. Fearing his vulnerability, he hastily fled the collapsing house and the country, refusing to be seen by anyone, including his Death Eaters. On that night, word of Voldemort's defeat and supposed demise quickly spread across Great Britain, sparking widespread jubilant celebrations that led to multiple breaches of the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy. Minister Bagnold justified the exuberant gatherings as the wizarding community's inalienable right to party. This date, October 31st, marked the end of the First Wizarding War, secured Harry's reputation as the boy who lived, and marked the point at which Snape's allegiance completely shifted. This was a prominent date in history as it allowed the wizarding world, at least for a time, to get back to normal. During the First Wizarding War, Voldemort really peaked in terms of power. Sure, he was able to secure followers and get his body back in the Second War, but in the First War, he really had a strong, secure, confident grasp on the wizarding world. He knew that he was in control, and everyone else knew it too. That is what makes this date so important, as if the events of this day didn't occur, Voldemort's rule over the wizarding world may have just lasted forever. However, the defeat of Voldemort didn't mean that it was all over. There were still a lot of loose ends that needed to be dealt with, namely the capturing of the Death Eaters. Death Eaters like Travers, Mulciber, and 3 accomplices in the Bones family murder were captured and imprisoned. Thorfinn Rao, Gibbon, Selwyn, and Jugson were convicted and sent to Azkaban. Igor Karkaroff betrayed Augustus Rookwood. Fenrir Greyback and other werewolves went into hiding, while the last remaining giants resettled in rural Denmark, and Severus Snape, who had defected towards the end of the war, was vouched for by Dumbledore and instated as a professor at Hogwarts. But despite these efforts, many Death Eaters still managed to evade punishment, using a variety of excuses and resources to avoid facing consequences for their crimes. One of the biggest ones was the claim that they were acting under the Imperius Curse. Although Lucius Malfoy, Nott, Avery, the Carrow siblings, Crabbe Goyle, and Corbin Yaxley faced legal action, they were eventually cleared of wrongdoing. But while Voldemort was gone, his cause did live on to some extent, and not all Death Eaters had given up. Bellatrix Lestrange, Rodolphus Lestrange, Rabastan Lestrange, and Bartemius Barty Crouch Jr. being the best examples of this. This group would eventually go on to abduct and torture Frank and Alice Longbottom in an attempt to extract information on Voldemort's whereabouts. The torture was so severe that the Longbottoms were left mentally insane and had to be cared for at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. This left their son Neville entrusted to the care of his grandmother. The heinous attack incited widespread anger and was considered one of the most horrifying crimes ever committed. Alistair Moody and Kingsley Shacklebolt led a team of Aurors in capturing the entire Lestrange family and Crouch Jr. They were brought to trial, where Barty Crouch Sr., ashamed of his son's involvement, sentenced them all to life in Azkaban. At this stage, Bellatrix defiantly expressed her loyalty to the Dark Lord, proclaiming that he would return to save her and her family as they were taken away by Dementors. After being stripped of most of his magical abilities, a defeated Voldemort sought refuge in Albania, haunting the remote forest where he had previously ventured. Desperate to regain a physical form, he attempted to possess the bodies of animals, particularly snakes, though this only resulted in their premature demise due to their inability to withstand his magical powers. Unable to venture out and possess humans due to the ongoing search by Aurors, Voldemort waited, hoping that one of his faithful followers would find him and restore him to power, unaware that many of his loyal followers had been imprisoned or killed. With the dark forces that had terrorized the wizarding world for years now vanquished, the survivors of the war began the task of rebuilding. However, the lingering presence of Lord Voldemort, who had surpassed Grindelwald as the most formidable dark wizard, continued to cast a shadow of fear. Even a decade after his downfall, the mere mention of his name instilled terror. The belief in his possible survival persisted, with opinions ranging from him being dead, laying in wait for the opportune moment to resurface, to being horribly weakened and half dead. It was the end of Voldemort, for now. And that's it for this video. What did you learn about the First Wizarding War? What piece of wizarding history do you want me to cover next? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and to forget to live.